أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, welcome to the show Think About It. Now last week we did a show about the war on humanity, and as much as people have to move on with their lives and be busy, obviously we think about things for certain periods of time, but we wouldn't want that message to die anytime soon. So for all of our viewers out there who watch this show, who watch the other shows that are on this channel, if you have any ideas, if you have any know of different charities, organizations, fundraisers that are taking place, please, you can see the bottom ticker tape run at the bottom. Email us, give us a call, let us know how we can be a benefit to society. We would love to be there to cover shows, to cover events where people are definitely trying to be a benefit to the community and furthermore the world as well. Today's topic, dear viewers, is an interesting one as well because it looks at the aspect of contemporary world, which means the millennials. A millennial is a person who was born 1982 and after. This is the textbook version of it. So that means if you're 38 years old or younger, you are a millennial. I'm a millennial myself. So today's show is dedicated to you millennials out there and myself. We're going to try to get to the bottom of what issues we have, why they actually exist, and whether or not we're accused accurately or not, because we definitely are accused for quite a few things. Our story starts off with a mother. This woman had 3 children in her house, of course, and she used to take care of them. And she was suffering issues with her children because they would not listen to her, of course, after the age of adolescence when her kids were 13, 14, 15, and onwards. So she started facing so much stress because she didn't know if her kids were going to go on the right path, if they were going to adopt bad habits, if their peer pressure was positive or negative. Obviously, parents have this issue. So yes, this show is also for parents. So if you are a parent, please do tune in, stay tuned in, and watch this show. So this lady, having so many issues, ended up meeting a doctor, a psychiatrist, someone who she thought could answer questions and help her, or at least give her some tips and techniques on how to deal with her kids. And when she sat in front of the psychiatrist, her main complaints were very simple. My kids are self-centered. They only think about themselves. They don't help people or go out of their way to do anything. They're egocentric. Her second complaint was that they indulge too much in technology. They're on their phones all the time, or they're playing video games, whether it be on computer or having a PlayStation or an Xbox or some other console. And they indulge so much so in technology that they don't give time to anything else. They're too preoccupied to go outside or do something. And they have very little patience. So she presented these issues to the psychiatrist. And as the psychiatrist listened to her, she asked the psychiatrist, are there any tips, techniques, or tricks in which I could help my children overcome these issues? Now, before I tell you what the psychiatrist had to say, let's look at these issues and let's find out what research has to say, what universities have said. Cornell University, New York State University, University of Toronto here in Canada, Brock University here in Canada, and you have other universities around Europe, around Asia, who've done similar researches on this topic. So let's see what they have to say as well. Number one, this is something that is fact-written with The Economist. The Economist is a very big magazine, something you could find in the USA, and it's followed by billions of people around the world, not just millions. And The Economist states that millennials, people who are born 1982 and after, are the most best educated generation of all time. Best educated. And out of all the research that I could find, this is only the one point that was positive towards millennials. I personally could not find anything else. Yes, there's something about science, technology, moving forward. That's all there, but it all comes under the umbrella of education. So So yes, we're blamed for being self-interested, indulged in technology, having very little patience, and we resort to bad habits at times. That's what people say. I want to shed some light on these issues today, because that's what people say. When you meet somebody who's of an older generation, and if you're having a bit of an argument or a debate with them, they would throw these things on you. And they would say that you are egocentric, you are a person who doesn't have any patience. Educated, okay. So we're the best educated generation, apparently. So apparently, it is said that 61% of millennials, this new generation, is an educated generation, which is great, because if you compare it with previous generations, or just the very previous one, they were educated at 46%. So yeah, that's a great hike. That's an amazing hike. But how beneficial is it? Today, have a look at employment and unemployment. 52% of millennials who have degrees or who are apparently best educated are unemployed. Why is that? In the 1970s and the 1980s, people who did not have a college university or a college university degree or education, 70% of those people, in fact 75 to be exact, had jobs just like anybody else. They were working at service providers, whether they were contractors, builders. People who didn't have education were still doing these jobs. They were there, they were in the market. Whereas 25% of people who had degrees were doing these jobs. Then you have the skilled jobs, where you have doctors, maybe some more engineers, professors, teachers, people who are in different facets of careers which require scope. Obviously, you require a degree for some jobs, which is what people went and did. But I'm talking about jobs which bring it down to the layman end. Construction, security. You talk about working at Tim Hortons, or if you're in the States, working in Dunkin' Donuts. These jobs were occupied by people who didn't have formal education. So 75% of people were occupying that in the 70s and the 80s. Today, these same jobs have a 180-degree flip ratio. 75% of people who have college degrees, university degrees, whether they be diplomas, certifications, bachelor's degrees, masters, or even PhDs, are working at gas stations, are working at Tim Hortons, Dunkin' Donuts, and all these other places, are doing service jobs. Whereas only 25% of the market is left for those people who couldn't afford or don't have formal tertiary education. How did this flip happen? Back in the day, if you had a university degree, you had better opportunity to grow, to get better jobs, to get highly paid jobs as well. Today, you're expected to have a college degree, a university degree. So instead of it being a good way to get ahead, instead of being something that would make you more skilled in a discipline, give you a little bit of practice as well, so you could take on the practical world, today a degree is something that is mandatory. Even if you go up to Starbucks to get a job, obviously degree is not something that they underline, but they definitely do ask. If you want a degree, if you want to work as a security guard, they ask you the same question. Where's your certification? Where's your diploma? To do minor jobs today, you need to be certified, you need to give time to it, you need to go and do courses with it. Now, there are two different ways of looking at it. Some people say this is a business that maybe the government or maybe private entities are trying to capitalize on. So if you want to be a security guard, you need to do a certification for becoming a security guard. Let's charge people money, make them do a course so they could do it. But here's the thing. Even if you do that diploma or that certification, it doesn't guarantee you a job. It just makes you eligible to apply to one. So these are the dynamics that have changed in terms of employment. And in fact, this is now just a minor tip of the iceberg situation that I've explained to you. Let's talk about the corporate environment. The 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s were boom years. That means businesses flourished. If you had a new idea, if you had a passion for it, you knew how to do the job, you knew why you were bringing a business to life, you would be successful. Then there were some people who did market research and study that this area has scope. So let's do business in that, regardless of having interest in it or not. And today, it's a standard rule. Children don't go to work or find jobs or study subjects that much. I'm sure there are students who do that. But approximately 50% of the new generation does not study a subject that they're interested in. They study a subject because they know that a career in this subject has scope. So you're already half-hearted when you're going into that field. MVP is something I want to talk about. MVP means minimum viable product, not most valued player. Forget that, that's sport terminology. We'll talk about that some other time. But MVP is something that was adopted by companies in the 1980s. In the 1980s, when companies were growing and booming, they wanted to get a lot of market coming their way, a lot of people to use their services, become customers, become clients. And they used a business model. Of course, MVP is part of this business model, but the model itself was called shareholder primacy. Shareholder primacy means that you maximize shareholder wealth. So every single year, you turn over a profit, even if it's 5 cents, $5, $500, $5 million. You are expected to be profitable by a higher margin than you were the previous year. Now think about this. 1980s, 1990s, boom years. This theory of shareholder primacy was introduced in the late 70s. It was adopted in the 80s. It was standardized in the 90s, and today it's followed as though it's the truth. It's followed without people even looking at that system being old or outdated or even question it. Shareholder primacy means that you have to turn over as much profit as you possibly can. So imagine there's a city with 100 people, and you open up an educational institution, and you want to provide education. Your market is 100 people. So every year you increase the amount of people that are coming and studying at your institution. One year you have 5 people, then you have 10, maybe you get 15. So yes, every year your profits are increasing. But once you've hit 100, how can you increase your profits? The aspect of maintaining doesn't exist in today's business. It's all about turnover. It's all about making money. And I will give you today an example, a real example. I've been a victim of it as well. And I'm going to give you a real example of 3 different organizations. Of course, I'm not going to mention them, but one was an educational organization. One was an organization where people were dealing with cars, importing and exporting cars. It was a car company, and it was a certain showroom that they had. And one was a call center which dealt with after-hours security emergencies. What happened is that in 2015, the funding for the educational institution was stopped by the government because the institution was doing financially well. It was the same thing with the other companies. And when it was stopped on the contingency that because you're making so much money, you should be self-sustaining. The money you make should be the money you use. You don't require aid from the government or from anybody else. So this company, in 2015, when funding stopped, they were profitable, very profitable. But when funding stopped, they started thinking, okay, so now we have to do something to make money for our shareholders, to make sure that their wealth is still increasing. Every single year, some benefit or something was cut down from the employee's expense. So in 2016, every single employee had a telephone from the company, a mobile phone, a cell phone. The company asked for those cell phones back. So if one employee was using up to $50 a month, and you multiply that by 1,000 employees, that's $50,000. So let's get that and put that into the wealth situation. So we've made a profit and we've done this. So employees lost the luxury of having a cell phone. So they had to go and buy one. It's not a very big difference, but it is something that they took a hit with. The following year, they still had to come up with money somehow. They've reached their maximization of clients and customers or students. How do we maximize this? So what they ended up doing is they ended up moving. They used to provide housing facilities for their employees. So their employees used to live in houses or villas or whatever apartments that they used to have according to their needs. So if someone had 5 children, they would have a house. If someone would have 2 children, they would probably have a smaller house, a villa, or a condominium, an apartment with enough rooms. And if someone was a single person, they'd probably have a studio apartment. The following year, everyone was told that, oh, sorry, we're not going to provide you housing anymore, and this is a fixed stipend that we're going to give you every month for your rent. Which didn't cover everyone, of course, because now you've made a standard board across it. So somebody who has 5 kids or somebody who's single is getting the same stipend for their housing. And the company has saved so much money because they've taken away housing from people, just to maximize shareholder value. Then what happened is, when the following year occurred, 2018 or 19, they realized that they still need to maximize shareholder value because they haven't questioned the system. They haven't seen it to be something that's an old model. They haven't seen that, okay, we have to maintain now. But they're not working on that anymore. They're still trying to maximize shareholder value. They're trying to maximize and make sure other people are wealthy instead of the actual employees and people who are working in their jobs. So then what ends up happening is that people who are working, let's say you're in the administrative department and there were 5 employees who were working there. They realized and they said that, wait a second, this person is doing X, Y, Z, and this person is doing A, B, C, and this person is doing E, F, G. One person can do 2 people's job. So they fired a person and gave more responsibility to an employee with 1 salary. So if you understand what I'm saying, they're trying to, by hook or by crook, cut down somehow, do cost cutting to make sure that they maximize shareholder value. MVP, minimum viable product. That means you start off small, but every year you make it better, and so you start getting more money and more money and more money. But that's not happening anymore. You're not making anything better anymore. You're making things worse for the people who are actually doing the job because you're slashing their benefits, then you're giving them more responsibility, and that's where layoffs started happening. The term layoff, that means you're made redundant, you're fired, is not something that was very common in the past because of shareholder primacy. Because it was a booming market. People would be laid off if they didn't do the work right, if they broke contract, if they did something that was self-interest, so it was a conflict of interest, or if they actually broke their contract, or they weren't working properly, or they required more training. And those were the reasons why people were fired before. But today they're fired based on the fact that, oh, sorry, we can't afford you anymore because we have to give money to the shareholders. And that's a model that has also affected people during the COVID pandemic. A lot of companies have closed their doors. Why would they close their doors? Okay, you're not making money, but you have contingency plans which help you, which you have to fall back on. But because of the shareholder primacy model that people follow, that, oh, the guys who are sitting upstairs, they need money. How do we get it? They had to fire employees, and plus customers are not coming in, clients are not working. So there's no equity, there's no money revolving around that they could use. There's no recurring fund for them to play with, for them to actually exercise their industry or their company's product or service. So all of a sudden, they've had to close their doors because they can't afford anything anymore. And that is the biggest issue over there as well. Now, because of this, today's generation, the millennials that are going into work, they're working in environments where people are more worried about the numbers, about the profits, about the margins, than they are about the human being doing the job. How motivated is someone when they just have to meet deadlines, and if they can't meet them, something wrong is happening? Of course you're affected. Imagine if a manager walks into your office or my office, a boss, someone who's your superior, your supervisor at work, and says that, oh, your numbers or your performance has been down for, I don't know, the past quarter, past 2 quarters, 3 quarters, Bring them back up, or I can't guarantee you what the future is going to be like for you in this company. That's a warning. That's a threat. How motivated is that person to go into work the next day and do their best? Not really. So what's happened is that because of this model, this business model, which is outdated, which needs to be reevaluated. If business people are watching this show today, I mean, I'm talking to Rogers, Cogeco, Bell, Virgin Mobile. I'm talking to institutions. I'm talking to universities. I'm talking to schools, private schools, public schools. I'm talking to all of you people. Of course, public schools are funded by the government, but private schools more so, private colleges and universities. I'm talking to all of you. If you're doing well right now, that's great. But you need to have a look at this situation clearly. Get rid of shareholder primacy. Why? Because it affects your service and your product at the end of the day. You're devaluing your employees. You're slashing their benefits. You're offering less money for more work just so you could fill the pockets of somebody who opened the company or is a shareholder. This model needs to stop because at some point you've maximized on your customers, you've maximized on your clients, you've maximized on your students. Now you need to work on maintaining it. To maintain it, you still need a good body. U of T, what are you famous for? You're famous for great, qualified, intellectual professors and in different fields. So when students come to U of T, it's a dream for them to come to U of T. It's the same with Harvard, it's the same with Yale, it's the same with Cambridge and Oxford, or schools back home, universities in Pakistan, LUMS, NUML, IBA, universities in India, universities in Bangladesh, universities in China, universities in South Africa, universities all over the world. Big universities are renowned for what? Their staff. But do you know what the truth is? I'm going to give you an example. Now this is happening in a country that I'm not going to mention. But because of shareholder primacy, they have let go of professors, people who gave their lives to the field of education, who know what they're doing, who enjoy teaching. They fired them because they couldn't afford them because they had PhDs. And they started hiring less skilled people, people with certifications, not even a bachelor's, a certification, oh, I know how to teach language, I have a CELTA, I have a TESOL, I have an ONTEL, or all these other different certifications available for teaching language. Oh, I have this certification for teaching ACCA or CA. They haven't done it completely. They have minor certifications. But now companies are just saying, oh, if this guy comes or this lady comes, they're going to cost us less, so hire them. So what we're doing now is we're not focusing on quality anymore. And because we're not focusing on quality, everything suffers. That's why when universities, they have ratings, right? This is rated 1, 2, 3, 4, top 10 universities around the world, top 20, top 500. What are they rated on? Based on their research, their staff, the student intake that they have. But nowadays, people are not focused on the main aspects of it. You have teachers who don't do much research anymore because they don't know how to do research. You have people who are trying to teach, but they don't have the skills or tool sets to teach. It's not their fault. Obviously, you come out of high school, university, you've got your degree in your hand, you have your certification in your hand, you're trying to find a job. And if a reputable organization hires you, whether it be in the business industry, in the education industry, in sports, arts, whatever it is, you're thankful. You thank your stars that, oh my God, I got a job. And you go for it. And you try to do your best at that job. But point is that a lot of people have been undermined because of this business model. And we need to put it away. So when you talk about the millennials, number one, what has the current or the previous generation or the generations before that done to give the millennials a platform? You've given us the model of shareholder primacy, of MVP. We walk into an office and we want to work. Nobody cares about us. They don't care how well we do. They don't care how bad we do. If we do well, they're quiet. Okay, he's doing his job. If we do bad, we're a target. We got a target on our back. And that's why young millennials can't admit that they don't know something. They can't go out and ask for help because the moment you express that I don't know what I'm doing, I need some help or training, you've got a target on your back. And this concept of layoffs in companies, it starts because of shareholder primacy. A lot of people say, why does this company fire people? Why is this happening? Why are they not treating us like human beings? It's because their business model is not allowing them to treat you like human beings. When you go, I remember when I was traveling, I got to a hotel, and when I checked into the hotel, there was a mistake in my booking. And this lady, instead of helping me, first she got nervous, she tried to help me, but then when I was a bit frustrated and I said that I'd like to go to my room, I've been traveling for I don't know how many hours, she was a bit rude with me. And when she was rude with me, I asked her, why are you treating me like cattle? Why can't you treat me like a human being? And her response was that if I don't do this right now, if I don't do my job, or if I can't solve this issue right now, and da-da-da, I'm in risk of losing my job. So nowadays you have employees who are scared to lose their job. So they're not enjoying their work. They have stress at work. They're facing depression. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've heard it. You can research it and Google it right now. I'm sure there are many magazines and newspapers that talk about it. The current generation is facing depression. Why? It's because of the models and what the previous generation has left behind. Now let's talk about the second point, technology. The current generation, the millennials, are indulged in technology. And there's so much so that they don't give time to anything else. I'd like to ask previous parents a question. When mobile phones, laptops, tablets, all these things existed, even before them, when you had television and you had cable TV, or you had a decoder with a smart card that used to go in and you had access to various channels, when your kids cried or were busy, or not busy, but were crying and they wanted to do something, they were running around the house, kids are active. It's their job to run around. That's what a child does. When you go to a restaurant, or when you're waiting at a government office and you see some lady or some man with a young boy or a girl who's running around screaming, don't feel negatively. Don't look at them in a condescending manner. That's a kid's job. A kid doesn't know what they're doing. They're here to have fun. Why are you and why am I ruining it for children? We should look at children and be happy. When a child smiles, that takes away a lot of stress as well. We should be there to help each other. But we end up blaming, judging, labeling society. So my point is, how many parents, whenever their child was a bit anxious, a bit uncomfortable, handed them a cell phone, opened up the TV and started showing them cartoons? How many? I'm not saying everybody, but how many? Statistics show 63%. From the 1980s, that means when you had cartoons on television, and you could, the first time the invention of recording something came on, up until now, 63% of parents put technology in front of their child's face, just so they would calm down. So today, when that child is 18, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, even if they're younger, if they're using technology, why are you blaming them? Technology was introduced to them. Once you introduced it to them, and you introduced it to them as a filter for when they were anxious, when they were uncomfortable. Now whenever they're anxious and uncomfortable, they resort to technology. And then the other point is having little patience. Today's generation, you have applications where you could order food and it arrives at your door within 20 to 30 minutes. You can order groceries and they arrive at your door. You want to watch a movie, you open up applications to watch a movie at any time that you will. So things are instantaneous. You want something, it's instantly there. So you could blame technology for this, you could blame people who have developed it to that extent, but patience was never taught to children. Patience was not something that was taught to children. You're standing in a line, the child's waiting for food at a restaurant, and the child says, "Mommy, I'm hungry," or "Daddy, I'm hungry." And you say, wait, we're waiting for the food to come. And the second time the child complains, you put a phone in front of their face. So they weren't learning to be patient, they were learning that there's something else that I could keep myself busy with. And that's what they do today. So today, people are keeping themselves busy with technology instead of being patient. So patience is lost because of the new era. We don't wait for things anymore. Unfortunately, when you go to work and you want to have a career, when you want to build relationships with people, these things take time. They're not instantaneous. You don't trust somebody like that. There's no certification. You don't go do a course, oh, I trust people now. That doesn't work. You talk to people. You understand them. You might help them out every once in a while. You treat them with respect. Slowly but easily, somewhere down the line, when you're continuously helping people, you're making an effort, people start trusting you. It doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen in maybe 10 days. There's no timeline when you say that, oh, this is the time when you can get trust. It doesn't work that way. It's something that's constant, that you have to practice. You have to practice as much as you can. Now, with that said, the lady who was talking to the psychiatrist in my story, she said that her children are self-centered. That means they only think about themselves. So if you think about yourself, in the 1980s, 90s, even when I was growing up, I remember that when somebody would ring our doorbell or knock on our door, the whole family went to the door. Kids wearing socks would slide up to the door. You'd open up the door. You didn't ask to see who it was. You'd open up the door. You'd find out. You'd see somebody standing, even if they were a random stranger, a family friend, maybe a child was asking you to come outside. But it was normal. It was casual. Canada, in this country, 10, 20, 30 years ago, a neighbor would be mowing their lawn. Someone else would come outside. They'd see that their lawn needs mowing as well. After the neighbor's done, they'd say hi, hello. And you'd go and you'd mow someone else's lawn as well. People used to help each other without having an excuse to do so. It wasn't about a tally table that I do this for you, you will do this for me. It wasn't micromanaged. It was people helping each other out from the goodness of their hearts. But even the previous generation and even my generation, how many times have we helped our neighbors out? On your street where you live, or in a building or an apartment, in that building, on your street, how many neighbors do you know by name? How many people do you meet? How many times has it happened that you've cooked food in your house, maybe it was a bit more, or maybe you just cooked food for the fun of it, and you took it and you gave it to a neighbor? How often is it now that when a new person moves into our neighborhood, we go and we welcome them, let alone giving them food or buying groceries for them? As a community, we have deteriorated. We've become self-involved. The society is self-involved. Can you blame millennials for being self-involved? They didn't have the same childhood as you did. They didn't have the same childhood where people were friendly, where they used to go to a door, knock on somebody's house, and someone would open up and smile and say hello. Nowadays, people ask you, what do you want? Why are you here? Even today, I mean, of course, COVID has a huge impact on people who are couriers and who deliver food. I used to deliver food as well. I've had times when I've ordered food as well. People leave it at your door and they leave. There's no interaction anymore between society. And because there's a lack of interaction, there's a lack of understanding. And when there's a lack of understanding, there's a lack of willing to be open to people, helping people. Thus, you become self-interested. You're worried about yourself. And everybody's running after their job and their daily routines, which obviously is something you can't really take away from them. But because they're working, they go to work for 8-9 hours, sometimes they're working at home as well, and all of this kind of brings people to a situation where they can't give time to other activities. So we say self-interested. Why would you say that a child is self-interested when that's the only way he knew or she knew how to live, and that's how they grew up? It's not really their fault. You say they lack patience. Why would you blame them for being impatient when you were the one who provided them the tools to filter out their uncomfort, their discomfort, their uneasiness, or when they were anxious? Of course, they're going to resort to that. We talk about bad habits. Now, bad habits. We live in a world where, of course, there are a lot of things that have become more common than they were in the past. When you go to school today in university, you've got to pay for your tuition fee, so you have a job, or you have different jobs that you're trying to pay your tuition fee with. You're trying to pay your books with it, your accommodation if that's included. With so much work, at the same time you need to study to earn a degree. You can imagine that a child today, a young mind, is definitely much more stressed than the previous generation. They take leave of absences from university due to depression. They take a semester off. Yes, this is something that was unheard of even in my time and in the previous generations. But today the society has turned so much so that these are necessities now. People need to step back and take a break and breathe. And then bad habits only come when you're completely stressed, you don't know what's happening. I'm not somebody who's justifying why bad habits happen. Where bad habits are, they are. But children are confused as well. They haven't built the mechanism to have relationships with people. They don't help other people out because they were never taught to do so. They've been given technology in front of their face so they could filter out whenever they're uneasy and they feel anxious. So with all these things combined, obviously, when you go into a world which has narcotics, vices, and things in abundance now, and they go out and they see it happen, they can quite easily get trapped into it. But here's the flip side. The current generation has access to a lot of information. Correct. They have access to how the life is nowadays, how struggles are. Children today know what mortgage means. Children today know how much money you need in order to pay for a mortgage. They know about the inflation of a market. They go and they research things and they have all these things available to look at. And what they start doing is they start planning. Okay, how am I going to make a house if I have this job, if I study this, or if I do that, that has scope, I can make money, I can probably buy a house and do this. And statistics aren't with them. The Economist has stated that more than 50% of the millennials in the future will not be homeowners. They're less likely to be homeowners. It's because of the market boosting up, the economy going haywire, and we don't know what to do. So children today have actually grown up ahead of their time. I have other reasons over here, but I'm going to tell you some small solutions if possible. We should go out, and whenever I say build your community, communicate with your community, and have stronger bonds, go to your neighbor, say hi, hello. Next time you cook a meal, if you have a lot of ingredients available, cook something and send it to one of your neighbors. Find out how they feel about it. This is how you interact and become close with each other. This is what an actual neighborhood is supposed to be. That's how relationships are formed. When it comes down to your kids and they're anxious or in discomfort, instead of putting a technology or a tablet in front of their face, ask them what is happening. Sit down with them, talk to them, give them some time. I know it might not always be easy, but do your level best to do so. And when we take care of these things, you'll see that the millennials will no longer have issues. But my biggest advice goes out to business owners, people who are multi-million-dollar conglomerates and organizations who have that shareholder primacy model. Please, lose that model. Because if you don't, your companies are not going to survive in the future. There's no such thing as being number one in business. It's an infinite game. It keeps continuing. 10 years, 20 years from now, there will be more institutions that will open up. There will be more businesses that provide the same service that you do, and they might provide it better as well. This is an infinite game that we're in. Work on sustainability. Work on maintaining what you have. Treating your employees with respect, not slashing their benefits whenever you get the opportunity to do so. Not discussing layoffs. You're trying to find the right person to do the job. It's not the person's fault. You need to train people to do a good job. If you fired more than 10 people in the past year or 2 years, maybe the only thing in common was the fact that they worked for your company. So maybe your company has some form of discrepancy that needs to work on itself. Come up with a new business model that helps you sustain yourself and you're a benefit to society. Know why you're doing business. What? Everybody knows that. That's the outcome. Your outcome is income generation. Your outcome is making sure that these many cars are sold, or these many students are taught, or these many graduates come out. Your outcome is something that's known worldwide. Your why, the purpose of why you do it, that is unknown to many people. Make your why come out. Leave old business models, and you'll see yourself succeed in life. Now, these are the only few advices that I could give you, but I hope that you're able to follow them. If you have advice that could help us, call us. At the bottom, you can see an email address. You can see a phone number. Tell us how we can make our society better. Tell us how we can actually bond with our neighbors. Make sure that every now and then there's a potluck dinner where you have the street closed with 2 cars and everybody comes out and enjoys a meal. Whether it be on an occasion as Thanksgiving, whether it be Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr, whether it be Christmas or any other ceremony or event that takes place. Before I finish up the show, I'd like to remind all of you again, the war on humanity and the fact that people are losing their lives every day is not something that's going to go away. Please do something about it. Contact us and let us know about the charities that are running around, something that you feel is more reliable, and we'd like to indulge in it. If you have events happening, we would definitely love to cover it. I would personally come down there too. Thank you very much if you could do that. Please do subscribe to Awaz Entertainment on YouTube. Please do click on the bell icon so you can get different alerts, and hopefully see you next week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Think about it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.